In the most ancient days of Magic the Gathering, a set was birthed that rocked the foundations of the game, ultimately threatening to destroy it entirely. That set was Chronicles, and today we're gonna open some.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends, I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for something truly delightful. Taking a look at some old school Chronicle action. Now, before we dive into the opening itself, I would like to give you some background information because this is a relaunch of my historical opening series. You can call them HOEs for short. So, Chronicles was released all the way back in 1995, and it was a very weird beast. It was an entire reprint set that was comprised out of 4 different expansions. So you had Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends, and the Dark. Now, the cards from these sets weren't equally distributed amongst Chronicles. It was heavily favoring Legends. 71 cards in the set were from Legends, 14 from Arabian Nights, 21 from Antiquities, and 19 from the Dark. The purpose of the set was to try and get difficult to acquire cards into the hands of Magic players, which is obviously a very admirable goal. What happened was they printed this to essentially oblivion, where there was like billions of copies of these floating around, and it caused Magic collectors to freak out about the collectability of their cards. And it's kind of funny to think about this old school mentality where they were worried that printing all these cards would ruin the game, where getting cards into players' hands actually is a great way to grow the game. But Wizards of the Coast, as a result of printing Chronicles, actually went ahead and created the reserve list where they said, look, we promise not to reprint this big list of cards. So Chronicles is a very historically important set. On top of that, packs are extremely difficult to get and expensive. And speaking of which, the pack I have is actually Japanese. The original Chronicles was printed in white border. This is black border, which makes it more desirable for old school players. If you're newer to the game, you may not be aware that white borders weren't desirable back in the day because they indicated the lesser version of a card. But these are all black bordered and not in English. So on top of getting to appreciate the opening, we're also gonna have the fun game of testing my memory. I'm not gonna look the cards up, and I'm gonna try and tell you what every single one is. Now, I'm super hyped. I've been waiting to do this. Let's dive in. And here we have the actual booster itself. You can see Chronicles printed right across it. You've got the actual expansion symbols for the sets that are in here. You've got Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends, and the Dark along the top of this globe. The globe is the expansion symbol for the set. And if you take a look at the back as well, you can see that it's made here for Hobby Japan. You again have the different set symbols. Let's just take a moment and appreciate that this pack had been sitting inside a multiverse gift box for decades. This thing has been on a journey of 27 years to make it to this moment, and we only get one shot to open and appreciate it correctly. So let us do that. Actually, you know what? I think I'm gonna keep the booster packs for this series. So let me try and open it like a little bit gently. All right, hold on. Oh, all right, well, whatever. Okay, we're in. We're in, boys. Let's go. Let's go. Never mind being gentle with it. Oh, right out the gates. We're starting with a Witch Hunter. It'll be interesting to figure out which of the cards in this pack are the uncommons versus the commons as well. Now, what I'm going to try and do, since the last one seemed a bit shaky, is let's try getting in nice and close here. Hopefully that looks good. All right, so we have Witch Hunter. Now, Witch Hunter is 2 white and 2 for a 1/1. It has the ability to do tap to do a damage to a player, and it's pay 2 white and 1, and is it bounce an enchanted creature? There's some sort of, I feel like it's a bounce effect. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put the English versions up on the screen so you guys can see how close I am to the effect. I love the difference in the Chronicles printings, specifically the Japanese ones, compared to the original dark printings, in terms of getting this nice kind of rich version of the artwork. Normally, if you take a look at the original printings, they don't have the same level of pop to the art. But anyways, the Witch Hunter looks absolutely vicious. I always thought it was crazy that this was a white card, right? He has this almost kind of demonic, pale, fat, gross face, and you just look at him and go, are you sure he doesn't belong on a black card? And it really does evoke the dark aspects of the set he comes from, which is the dark. You can see that from the little crescent moon there. So this is definitely a nice nostalgic start to this pack. So this is Witch Hunter. Let's see what we have next. Oh, this is Wall of Opposition. So 2 red and 3 for a 0/6 wall. And if you didn't know, back in the day, walls have a built-in rule that says they can't attack. It's been changed so that now all walls have Defender like printed on the card. But back in the day, you just had to know, yo, this is a wall, so it can't attack. And by the way, it's not a very good wall. It's 5 mana for a 0/6. You pay 1 colorless, 1 generic mana, and you get to give it +1/+0 until end of turn. I have absolutely no idea what the flavor text says at all. This is like an absolutely terrible card. Even back in the day, you had Wall of Fire, and Wall of Fire was only 2 red and 1. It was 0/5, and it pumped +1/+0 for red mana. So ultimately, this is a terrible card, but I do not remember the flavor text, so we'll have to see what it says for that on the English version. Next up, we've got, oh no, it's Abu Jafar. I legitimately was like, oh man, I hope that Abu Jafar shows up in this pack so I can talk about how absurd some of the concepts of old Magic cards were. And we've got Abu Jafar. Okay, so Abu Jafar is from Arabian Nights. He's one, I can't believe he's in this pack. It's so amazing. 1 white, 0/1. He is a summoned leper. And whenever combat ends, any creatures that were either blocked by him or blocked him all go to the graveyard. So basically, he's just a leper. He has leprosy. You know the disease where your body parts fall off? That's amazing to me. Like in most magical battles now, you see, hey, you know what? I'm going to summon up this gigantic dragon. Great, I'm summoning up a demon. I'm going to summon up a massive air elemental and tear everything to pieces. Old school Magic is like, yo, I'm going to summon a leper. And it's like, what? It's like, yeah, I'm going to infect all your dudes with leprosy. And it's like, are you playing white? Aren't you like supposed to be on the side of good and righteousness? Good, righteousness, and leprosy, son. Get some! I can't believe Abu Jafar is in this pack. This is amazing. This is such an absurd card. He's a 0/1, but he wipes out anybody he gets in battle with by giving them leprosy. Oh, this is awesome. Okay, let's move on. Oh, it's Dan. Ew. Dan. Okay. Dan is 2 blue for a 4/1. And it can't attack unless your opponent controls islands. And it can't stay alive unless you have islands. So if you don't have islands out, then you have to sacrifice it. So I'm pretty sure that's how it works, right? It's 2 mana for a 4/1. He can only attack people who have islands. He can only stay alive if you have islands for him to live around. And I mean, if you think about it from a flavor perspective, that makes perfect sense. That is one of the restrictions of a lot of the ancient sea monsters of the day, right? But I mean, from a game perspective, why would you limit yourself? As a blue mage, it's like, I have this crazy intellectual magic, but also I just summon up dumb fishes that can't get out of the water. It's like, that's kind of foolish. The artwork on this card, I always felt was wasted on it because I never thought Dan was a very cool card, but I thought that this artwork with the empty boats and the giant fish coming up is absolutely incredible because you know those boats are empty because the people in the boats know about these kind of fish or whatever and look down and, oh no, the Dan's coming, we gotta get out of here. And it's just the 4/1 aspect of it also makes it seem like a very voracious and reckless fish. You know what I mean? Like it'll come up and snap on these boats, but then it'll end up choking on the wreckage. But definitely old school cool flavor. Terrible card. Then we've got, Oh, what is this? Wall of Heat, right? Wall of Heat is 1 red and 2 for a 2/6. The artwork is a lady holding a big old yellow marble that's kind of vibrating. I guess the idea is she's supposed to be holding up this crystal that generates waves of heat. The artwork is actually very striking. It's one of the things that I absolutely adore about old school Magic is the variety and sometimes insanity of the artwork that we get. But ultimately, this is a pretty underwhelming kind of card. It's a 2/6 with literally no abilities. I mean, the 6 toughness is big, but as far as walls go, I don't really remember anybody playing this, and I do remember a fair number of people playing walls. After that, what do we have? Oh, Keepers of the Faith. It's so crazy to think that we played with cards like these because there were so few cards that existed back then that you just got whatever you could get your hands on. 2 white and 1 for a 2/3. That's it. They're just some clerics who have some crazy holy object floating. Like, that's the nutty part to me. Is like, okay, you've got humans, and normally they just be 0/1s, 1/1s. What is it about that artifact that makes them into a 2/3? Like, do they stop and just look at you, and then that object, it flies off and slams into your head? It's a very interesting card. I liked the early days of Magic for that. When we didn't really have an overall cohesive storyline for sets, you would get all these disparate pieces that told their own stories. And I definitely fed my imagination with these. So let us move on to the next card, which is, what's this one? Is this transformation? 1 black and 1. Oh, this is the one that switches power and toughness, isn't it? Yeah, that's got to be what it is. This, I believe, switches the creature's power and toughness, some kind of transformation. I cannot remember the name. Oh, this is funky. Look at that artwork. It's like a pixie queen being turned into a demonic horror. Look at the look on her face of despair as she's transforming. And there's the wizard in the background who's forcing that transformation upon her. Wow! Dude, this is one thing that I will say about looking at cards that aren't English. When you can't look at the words the same way because your brain can't really conceive of what they mean, you focus more on the artwork. And when you separate the artwork from Magic cards, you can sometimes find a lot of extra details that you never paid attention to. Because in my mind, this card was always a lady looking at her hand in horror. I never even picked up on the fact that she was a pixie. This card to me was, okay, flip a guy's power and toughness, moving on to the next card. All right, that's how I felt about it. But now when I look at the artwork, dude, this is absolutely awesome. What do we have next? Oh, Divine Offering. This card was decent back in the day. 1 white and 1 for an instant that says destroy target artifact. You gain life equal to its casting cost. And you can see a cleric there holding up a artifact, a staff, literally being smashed apart. It is a pretty epic move. It's literally like, hey, that's a nice artifact you have over there. Let me just go ahead and smash it open with divine energy and consume the power within it to extend my own existence. That is pretty epic. And in some ways, if it wasn't divine, would actually really trend more towards feeling black in nature, right? But this has more of a holy-esque feel to it. Pretty straightforward concept, but really does deliver the idea of a divine offering. Man, this is great. All right, then we've got Wall of Shadows. 2 black and 1 for a 0/1 wall. All combat damage that would be dealt to Wall of Shadows is reduced to 0. This thing is awesome. You know what I mean? Not by today's standards, but still, back in the day, abilities like this were really obnoxious to deal with. Unless you happened to be a red player and had a bunch of burn spells, or playing some weird corner case deck where you're playing with prodigal sorcerers and you're just pinging creatures. Stuff like that, you can remove these kind of creatures, but the creatures that say, I don't take combat damage, just go, oh, that's a nice gigantic creature you have over there. It'd be a shame if my little 0/1 made it so that it essentially was nothing, right? The artwork is amazing for this. The idea that it takes no combat damage because it's literally pure shadow and it blocks you by like encircling you, obscuring your vision, and as you go to swing it, it doesn't matter. How are you supposed to cut the darkness? Go outside at night with a butter knife and try and cut the darkness, my friends. You can't do it. Now imagine the darkness was chasing you around and enveloping you. Like, this actually could easily feature as a creature destruction spell if you look at it, right? Like, this looks like a bad way to go. The old flavor was fantastic. What do we have next? Next up, we've got Emerald Dragonfly. 1 green and 1 for a 1/1 flyer. I believe 2 green gives it first strike until end of turn. And yeah, this is funny because I remember using these. It was hard to get green flyers back in the day. You didn't have a ton of stuff. I remember poking people with Emerald Dragonflies, and it features artwork by Quentin Hoover, who, in my opinion, is one of the original classic Magic artists. As I mentioned, Magic art has a wide styling back in the day, but there were particular artists that when you saw their art, you knew it was them. You see the Emerald Dragonfly, that's Quentin Hoover. Same thing as the Vesuvian Doppelganger, Pixie Queen, you name it, right? But overall, this is like, by today's standards, it's not a cool card, but it is visually quite enjoyable. After that, we've got, this is Flood. 1 blue for an instant. I believe what it says is destroy target red permanent or return target mountain to its owner's hand. I think that's what this was. The old school hosers were pretty heavy with what they did, right? So the artwork shows literally a flood blasting through a village that looks so very washed out. And look at the lightning actually arcing down from the sky in the background. Pretty bleak looking overall. And what do we have next? Oh, it's Argothian Pixies. 1 green and 1. It's a 2/1 from Antiquities. It has, what is this? I believe it's all damage dealt to these guys by artifact creatures is reduced to 0. And you can see the little pixies here sitting in the artwork. And interestingly enough, this actually ties in to the Brothers' War. This is specifically mentioning the Brothers' War. These pixies having this sort of protection against artifacts is specifically tied in to the story of what's going on with the Brothers' War. And I'm covering that exact storyline over on Fantasy Geographic right now. We've already got 3 installments of it, so there's already an hour of lore about the best storyline in Magic's history, the Brothers' War, and we're getting a Magic set about it at the end of 2022 as well. I'm super stoked. I can't believe how awesome this pack has been. We got a Abu Jafar, who was my #1 choice for what I wanted to see in this pack, and an awesome tie-in to the Brothers' War lore as well. What a fantastic pack. That's absolutely incredible. And I'm guessing the uncommons from the pack would be those guys right there. So, thanks for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts on these historical openings. And remember, my friends, to share these hoes around so everybody can enjoy them. Big shout out to all my patrons, and I will see you, my friends, in the next video.